In the heart of Birmingham, there was a boy named Ethan. His childhood was painted with shades of struggle. His father worked at a factory that paid just enough to keep food on the table, and his mother cleaned houses. Ethan often wore hand-me-down clothes, shoes with worn soles, and carried a second-hand school bag that had seen better days. Yet, despite the difficulties, his parents taught him one thing every day: never give up, no matter how hard life seems. From a very young age, Ethan was fascinated by science. While other children played football in the park, he collected broken radios, old wires, and scraps of metal. He would sit on the floor in his tiny room, trying to assemble them into something that worked. His neighbors thought he was odd, but Ethan believed that every broken piece held a secret waiting to be unlocked. At 12, he told his teacher that one day he wanted to become an engineer and build machines that could change the world. The teacher smiled kindly but said, "Ethan, dreams are good, but you must be realistic. Not everyone becomes an engineer." Those words stung, but instead of killing his dream, they planted defiance in his heart. He decided he would prove everyone wrong. As he grew older, life only got harder. His father lost his factory job, and bills piled up. Ethan took small part-time jobs, delivering newspapers, cleaning cars, and working at a local grocery store. He often came home exhausted, but instead of sleeping, he stayed awake reading books borrowed from the library. He devoured every page about science, engineering, and invention. Sometimes he copied diagrams by candlelight because they couldn't afford electricity. At 16, he entered a school science fair with a project built entirely from discarded parts. While other students showcased polished, expensive kits, Ethan presented a handmade wind turbine built from old bicycle wheels and tin sheets. The judges laughed at its rough appearance, but when he switched it on and powered a small bulb, the crowd gasped. Though he didn't win, the applause of his classmates gave him the courage to continue. Still, the road ahead was not smooth. He applied for scholarships to study engineering, but rejection letters kept arriving. His grades were good, but not perfect, and universities often chose wealthier students with polished records. Ethan worked harder than ever, taking night shifts at a warehouse while continuing his studies. Some nights he wanted to give up, but then he remembered the spark in that glowing light bulb at the science fair. That memory reminded him that progress doesn't care about perfection, it cares about persistence. At 18, he finally secured a small scholarship. It wasn't enough to cover everything, so he combined it with part-time jobs. He studied during the day, worked at night, and slept only a few hours. Many people told him he was burning out, but Ethan's hunger to succeed was greater than his exhaustion. In university, he faced new struggles. Surrounded by students with expensive laptops and private tutors, he felt out of place with his old notebook and second-hand calculator. But while others relied on resources, Ethan relied on creativity. He solved problems differently, approaching them with the mindset of someone who had always worked with limited tools. Professors began noticing his unusual methods. By his third year, Ethan developed a small prototype of a low-cost water purification device. He tested it in local communities, and to his amazement, it worked. Families who once struggled with dirty water now had access to clean drinking water. That was the moment he realized his true purpose, not just to build machines, but to use science to make life better for ordinary people. After graduation, Ethan faced yet another challenge. Companies overlooked him, choosing candidates from prestigious backgrounds. For months he sent out applications and received nothing but silence. He could have given up, but instead he focused on improving his invention. He partnered with local charities, showcased his project at events, and slowly people began to take notice. At 25, a global organization invited him to present his water purification system. What began as a small experiment in a Birmingham neighborhood soon gained international recognition. Newspapers wrote about the boy who turned scraps into solutions. Investors reached out, and within a few years, Ethan's device was being used in rural areas across multiple countries. But what made Ethan remarkable wasn't just his invention. It was his journey. He often said in interviews, "I was never the smartest in the room, never the wealthiest, never the most talented. But I refused to stop." And when you refuse to stop, eventually the world has no choice but to notice. Was day dissatisfaction? At 30, Ethan returned to his old school. Standing in the same classroom where a teacher once told him to be realistic, he looked into the eyes of children who reminded him of himself. He told them, "Dreams are not about where you start. They are about how far you are willing to go. If someone tells you it's impossible, remember they are talking about their limits, not yours." Ethan's life became a beacon of hope. He proved that determination can turn broken parts into working machines, poverty into innovation, and doubt into power. His name became synonymous with resilience, and his work saved thousands of lives. But even in success, Ethan remained humble. He often walked through the streets of his old neighborhood, greeting the same people who once thought he was odd for collecting scraps. To him, those streets were not a reminder of struggle, but of strength. The story of Ethan is not about genius, privilege, or luck. It is about a boy who dared to believe in his dream when no one else did. It is about a young man who turned nights of exhaustion into mornings of progress. It is about resilience, grit, and the unshakable truth that greatness is built not in comfort but in struggle. And as Ethan himself said in one of his speeches, "If you ever feel small, remember, even the smallest spark can light the darkest night. You are that spark. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." In the city of Manchester, there lived a girl named Amelia. She was born into a family that struggled every single day to make ends meet. Her father drove a taxi, often working double shifts, while her mother stayed home to care for Amelia and her younger brother. They lived in a small apartment where the paint peeled off the walls and the sound of traffic never stopped. Yet inside Amelia's heart burned a dream that was bigger than the world she lived in. From a very young age, Amelia loved running. She didn't know why, but when her feet hit the ground, she felt alive. In the narrow alleys near her flat, she would sprint until her lungs burned and her legs shook. Her neighbors often laughed at the sight of a little girl running in worn-out trainers, but Amelia didn't care. For her, running wasn't just a game, it was freedom. At 10 years old, her school organized a sports day. Amelia entered the 400-meter race, nervous and unsure. She had no proper shoes, no training, no experience. Her opponents looked stronger and better prepared. But when the whistle blew, Amelia ran with everything she had. She didn't think, she didn't plan, she just ran. Against all odds, she won. That moment planted a seed in her heart. She thought, if I can win this, maybe I can go further. But dreams rarely grow without resistance. At 12, Amelia told her parents she wanted to be an athlete. They loved her deeply but worried. Her father said gently, Amelia, athletics is for those with resources. Shoes, coaches, travel, it costs money we don't have. Her mother added, focus on school first. Running won't pay the bills. Amelia nodded, but inside, she refused to let go of her dream. She began training alone. She woke up before sunrise, running laps around the park, timing herself with a cheap watch she bought at a flea market. Rain, snow, or wind, nothing stopped her. Some days she trained in heavy clothes because she didn't have proper gear. When people asked why she worked so hard, she answered simply, because I see something they don't. By 15, Amelia joined a local youth competition. She finished second. To others, it was a loss. To her, it was proof that she belonged. But the path was still full of obstacles. Coaches overlooked her because she lacked connections. Competitors mocked her worn-out shoes. She often cried at night, wondering if maybe her parents were right. But every time she thought about quitting, she remembered the feeling of winning that first school race, and the fire inside her reignited. At 17, she faced her biggest setback yet. During training, she injured her ankle badly. Doctors told her she might never run competitively again. The pain wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She felt her dream slipping away. For weeks, she sat at home, watching others progress while she struggled to walk. But one day, she looked in the mirror and whispered, "This is not where my story ends." With determination, she began rehabilitation exercises. Slowly, painfully, she built her strength back. By 19, she returned to the track. Many expected her to fail, but Amelia came back stronger. She trained with intensity, focusing not just on speed, but on resilience. She studied nutrition, discipline, and mental toughness. Step by step, she rebuilt herself. At 21, she qualified for a national championship. Standing at the starting line, she remembered the girl in worn-out trainers running through the streets of Manchester. She remembered the laughter, the doubts, the injury. And when the gun went off, she ran like she had been preparing for that moment her entire life. She didn't just run for herself, she ran for every child who had been told their dream was too big. Amelia crossed the finish line in first place. The crowd roared. Reporters surrounded her, asking how she did it. Her answer was simple. I never stopped running, even when life tried to stop me. Success didn't change her. Amelia continued to train harder, aiming for international competitions. She became a symbol of perseverance, inspiring young athletes across the UK. Schools invited her to speak, and she told children the truth, that talent matters, but grit matters more. She reminded them that circumstances don't define destiny, choices do. By 25, Amelia represented her country on an international stage. She wore her nation's colors with pride, remembering the times she trained in silence when no one believed in her. Each medal she earned wasn't just metal, it was proof that determination could rewrite destiny. Yet Amelia never forgot her roots. She funded local programs to provide proper shoes and gear for underprivileged kids. She returned to the same park where she once trained alone, this time coaching a new generation of runners. She knew that for every child like her, all they needed was someone to believe in them. Her story became a legend, not just in athletics, but in life. She was living proof that persistence can turn broken shoes into golden victories, doubt into applause, and pain into purpose. Amelia often ended her speeches with these words: "Life will try to trip you, laugh at you, even break you. But as long as you keep running, nothing, not poverty, not injury, not doubt, can stop you." The finish line belongs to those who never stop moving forward. And with every step she took on the track, Amelia showed the world that the girl once told to be realistic had, against all odds, become unstoppable. In the quiet outskirts of Glasgow, there was a boy named Oliver who carried dreams too big for the narrow streets he grew up on. His family lived in a modest home, his father a bus driver and his mother working part-time at a bakery. Money was always tight, and opportunities seemed far away. Yet within Oliver burned a hunger for knowledge that no circumstance could extinguish. From an early age, Oliver was fascinated by space. He would sit on the roof at night, staring at the stars, asking questions no one around him could answer. What's beyond that star? Why does the moon shine so brightly? Could people one day live on Mars? His friends teased him, calling him the boy with his head in the sky. But Oliver didn't mind. He knew that one day his head in the sky, dreams might touch the ground. At school, he wasn't considered extraordinary. His grades were average, and teachers often overlooked him. But what they didn't see was the hours he spent in the library, devouring books about physics, astronomy, and engineering. He didn't have the money for fancy telescopes, so he built one from cardboard tubes and broken lenses he found at a recycling shop. The images were blurry, but to Oliver, each glimpse of the moon through that makeshift telescope was a promise. At 14, he decided he wanted to be a scientist, maybe even an astronaut. When he told his teacher, she chuckled and said, "Oliver, people from backgrounds like ours don't end up at NASA. Be realistic." Those words hurt, but instead of breaking him, they hardened his resolve. He whispered to himself, "Maybe not many, but why can't I be the one?" As the years passed, Oliver worked relentlessly. While his friends played video games late into the night, he stayed awake solving equations and sketching rocket designs in his notebook. He knew he wasn't the smartest, but he was determined to be the most persistent. Life, however, had its own hurdles. His father fell ill when Oliver was 16, forcing him to take a job at a local shop to help cover expenses. He balanced school, work, and his passion for science all at once. There were nights he collapsed into bed, too tired to study, but every morning he woke up with renewed determination. At 17, Oliver applied for a scholarship program in London that supported underprivileged students interested in science. He poured his heart into the application, sharing his story of building a telescope out of scraps and his dream of studying the stars. Weeks later, he received a letter that changed everything he had been accepted. Moving to London was overwhelming. Surrounded by brilliant students with access to resources he had never imagined, Oliver often felt out of place. But instead of comparing himself, he reminded himself of his journey. He knew he couldn't outshine them in privilege, but he could outwork them in persistence. He spent hours in labs, often staying long after everyone left. Professors began to notice his dedication. One of them encouraged him to publish a paper on his ideas about low-cost satellite technology. Nervous but determined, Oliver wrote tirelessly. His first paper was rejected, his second too, but on the third try, he was accepted in a small journal. That moment gave him the confidence to keep going. By 22, Oliver was working on a project to design affordable satellites for disaster relief. His invention aimed to help poor countries monitor weather patterns and respond to natural calamities. It wasn't flashy, but it was meaningful. He proved that science wasn't just about reaching the stars, it was also about helping people here on Earth. Opportunities opened up. He was invited to present his project at an international conference. Standing on stage, wearing a borrowed suit, Oliver told the audience, "I am not here because I am special. I am here because I refuse to stop trying, even when everything around me told me to give up." His words struck a chord. At 26, Oliver earned a place in a European space research program. He worked on missions that explored Mars and studied distant planets. Each time he looked at the data streaming from space, he remembered the boy lying on his rooftop, staring at the night sky, dreaming. By 30, he had traveled to different countries, spoken at universities, and inspired thousands of young people who, like him, came from modest backgrounds. He often said, "Dreams are not about where you are born. They are about how far you are willing to go."